welcome to another season of Hoda's Career Info, the program where career professionals from across the globe meet to empower you to succeed. This program is brought to you by Right Career Fit. Listen and learn, and remember to have that very important career conversation with a career professional.
You need to go on your own journey to say what's for you. What is your calling for you? If you don't know what it is, then how can you get there? Is start getting around people that want to support your dream, your vision. Knowing what your top values are is critically important to make the right decision every time. Your life is your responsibility.
Thank you for joining me in Hoda's Career Info, your career program where guests from across the globe share career tips and personal stories to help you successfully navigate your career. I am Hoda, your host. I look forward to another season of career chats with international professionals who will inspire you to take your journey to the next level. Dr. Ken Keis is our guest today. He is an expert on leadership, purpose, wellness, and the foremost global authority on personality and behavioral assessments that increase and multiply your success rate. Dr. Ken has authored over 4 million words of content, including 500 articles, 4 books, several online courses, and a dozen assessments to help others realize their full potential. President and CEO of Consulting Resource Group International, Inc., also known as CRG, Dr. Keis has worked with many high-profile companies, associations, and industry groups. In the past 34 years, Ken has conducted more than 3,000 presentations and 10,000 hours of coaching and consulting. He is a highly sought-after author, speaker, trainer, and media guest. Ken was host of the top-rated podcast, Secrets of Success, with Dr. Ken Keis, with over 250 episodes. His most recent books include Why Aren't You More Like Me?, which we will be discussing in this episode, Deliberate Leadership, and The Quest for Purpose. And finally, Dr. Ken Keis has a surprise for you, the audience, so be sure to stay tuned till the end of the episode. I cannot wait to hear your thoughts on the empowering tips shared by Dr. Ken Keis.
Welcome, Ken Keis. I'm very excited to have you join me today. Your years of experience is going to benefit my audience, and I cannot wait to hear all the tips and pieces of wisdom you're going to share.
Thank you for the opportunity to be with you and hang out with you. It's nice to meet you in person at the conference and then progress to being able to share on this platform.
And I look forward to further collaborations with you if and when the opportunity arises, for sure.
Absolutely.
I always like to try and start my episode with a challenge to my guests. The challenge is similar to the one that you challenged us in the conference, but for you to choose one key career term that represents the services that you provide. It could have changed over the years, but what is your key career term today? The idea is to educate the audience when we say, I'm a change agent, I'm a career practitioner. What are we trying to provide, the type of services? And your definition of it. So not the Google definition or a dictionary definition, but your definition of your career term.
When I think about, my whole session at the conference was around purpose. That really has not changed. I think career as a definition is almost an oxymoron now, is that we have a purpose, we have a calling, we have an assignment, we have a theme, we have an essence that is our responsibility to kind of live out. And I add some other words to it, so I'm cheating. I'm sorry.
It can be more than a word. It
Yeah.
can be more than one word.
Well, purpose is the word, and there's really no other word, and then all the other things are subsets to that and go underneath that.
Well, thank you for elaborating on it. My next question to you is can you please share with the audience your personal story as a whole, or a personal story that is important to you and that kind of get you to do the work you're doing, and embedded within it, perhaps a message to the audience that you would like to pass by being on this program.
Well, I think a lot of times when we think about, career directions or life directions, certainly our family of origin or our family or our background is highly influencing what people do or what they don't do, the direction that they go into. With that, I grew up on a dairy farm. So I'm the eldest, third generation Eastern European descent. So do you think there was any pressure for me to stay on the dairy farm? A lot, right? So I went back onto the dairy farm, and after a couple of years of working with my dad, it didn't really go that well because both of us wanted to be in charge. And my dad was not a person who was a style of mentoring. He was really more telling. And then if there was conflict, he withdrew. So, and to his defense, I guess, is he grew up in a family where his mom was a single mom. His dad died when he was 15. He took over the farm when he was 15. Grandma was very critical. Then his eldest brother, who was with him, died when he was 17. So he had a lot of trauma that was going on there, and I think he just kind of squelched that. So a lot of times we are driven through our stories to go certain directions. And so now I'm fairly, in our personality model, extroverted does not mean people. It means your orientation toward the environment and how you tell the environment what to do, or does the environment tell you what to do? So I'm highly extroverted in our model, but it was still extremely difficult to leave the dairy farm because we get trapped in these things that I should do or want to do. And so I left the dairy farm. And of course, when I left, the family said, I did all of this for you. And they felt that I had betrayed them because this was the direction. And so I just want to encourage the listeners or the viewers that, yes, we want to honor our families and our parents and everything they've done with us, but your life is not their life. And culturally, there is a lot of cultures around the world where this is intertwined. It's almost an umbilical cord between you and your culture and your family, and this is what you should or shouldn't do. But I think we can still honor, but go on our own pathways. So I got involved with different agricultural industries, and I always knew that I was to speak or inspire or encourage others. So my involvement in the community was really as an MC, in leadership as a young person. Even at 22, I was president of a local agricultural group association. Most people had been in their 30s or 40s. And so I was called in these leadership roles, but then I just knew that I needed to formally transfer that. Now, in the middle of this, my grade 9 English teacher, with all due respect, said I would never amount to anything because I couldn't read or write. And it was discovered when I did my master's degree that I had dyslexia. And of course, with technology, that's now alleviated any kind of concerns for writing with the word. So a lot of times there can be, not a lot of times, there can be people in our lives who are well-meaning. I'm sure I don't know what she was thinking, but just making this negative comment that you wouldn't amount to anything. Now, here I am, I've written 4 million words of content. So my encouragement to people when you're with my story is start getting around people that want to support your dream, your vision. The other one you want to be careful of is if you share your vision, which is different than your family or your culture and where they want you to go, you're going to come up against a roadblock. So not that you're keeping it a secret, but my encouragement is you would go to those people that would support you on this journey of clarity so that you can live your purpose and your calling. And this is not a self-centered thing. This is a self-honoring so that you can bring your best self. So here I am 33, 34 years later in this profession, and honored to serve, thousands and thousands and hundreds of thousands of people around the world. If I hadn't made that choice, I'd still be on the dairy farm. Not that the dairy farm was less, that's just not my assignment. So my story is to encourage other people that you need to go on your own journey to say what's for you. What is your calling for you? So two other stories of clients that link into this that support sort of you finding your own pathway. I remember having a coaching client who was a medical doctor, and this was many years ago, maybe 15, 20 years ago. And he phoned me, he says, Ken, I'm miserable. And I said, why are you miserable? He said, well, I hate being a doctor. And I said, what do you mean? You spent years studying to be an MD. You're a great person. Why do you hate it? And so, well, this is what my dad always wanted. So even something as dedicated as a medical professional, he went down this pathway that was really not his calling or passion. So we talked through this, and I said, listen, don't abandon what you've done. Stay true to serving those patients. And they said, now find a pathway where you can serve others. What's interesting, he was able to, I don't really like the word pivot, but he was able to adjust his focus. And now what he does is he helps other medical doctors who are stressed, because there's a lot of people who are burning out because of that profession. And so he has credibility as an MD and having these patients, but he also now is teaching and encouraging and coaching other MDs or other medical professionals to take care of themselves, caregiving for the caregiver kind of thing. So, but it was a very major decision to walk away from or transition from all this training that he had. Now, I had another client who owned a automotive dealership. And this was a culture where really the father tells the son what to do. And the son I guess he's in the late 30s. And he really was general manager of this automotive dealership, really didn't like it, but stayed there because that's what his dad wanted. Well, one day his dad shows up in the dealership, says, son, I've sold the business and somebody else is taking over. You're out of a job. I said, what? What are you talking about? I said, well, what do you really want to do? I said, I want to go into the arts. I want to be, in acting or music or theater or something in this area. Well, that had nothing to do with the auto dealership. So a lot of times when we, and I don't want to say compromise, but when we go down through somebody else's pathway, then it comes to affect us negatively, as it did my friend at the dealership or I did the doctor. So those of you that are watching, that's my story too. And sometimes my family doesn't even really understand what I do. My dad's 90 something now. He says, what does your son do? Well, I don't know what he does, kind of thing. Is you honor your heritage. I learned a lot around resilience and hard work from the dairy farm and being persistent no matter what. You had to get it done. Yet at the same time, that was not what my assignment or calling is. So those of you that are watching, this is no disparaging of your culture, but please take your own path and then bring people like you, doctor, around them that can support them on this journey of clarity to figure out what is it that you're really, really supposed to do.
Thank you so much for sharing your story, Dr. Ken Keis. I really appreciate you sharing your story and the two examples you shared. Such an inspiration to many who are hesitant to move ahead and find what makes them happy, really. And based on these stories, Dr. Ken, you took some time to read your blog, and one of the blogs I want to talk about is Dare to Dream. That was the title of the blog. Can you elaborate on the value of getting engaged in wishes and dreams that may appear unrealistic to us? You gave us the examples. Is there anything you'd like to add similar along that line?
Well, it's interesting because we all have different times in life. And even for me right now, I usually write about things that are on my heart at the moment. So I actually wrote a newsletter every week for 10 years. And I backed that off a little bit where I'm revising some previous things. But, all of us need to have a vision at this stage in our life. So as somebody who is not retiring, but really transitioning away to caring for grandson, children, family. All these things are important. My ego doesn't need to be on the road like I used to be, where I was actually on the road for 300 days a year for 7 years, just traveling. I think we need to consider at this stage of our life, what is the vision that really inspires us? What energizes us? There's in my book, The Quest for Purpose. And by the way, we'll have a gift at the end of the show. So just stay put, and then we'll be able to give you that gift. I talk about the inspirational model. And the inspirational model is that when I am not content in the moment, I can create a lot of stress. So regardless if I have dreams or not, how can I actually be not happy, but joyful? Because if you actually look at some of the research, happiness is if I have a certain event occur, then I will be happy. Joy is a choice that in the moment, I can have what we call happy discontent. I might not be where I'm at or where I want to be, but at this moment, I have a choice if I'm going to be in joy or not. And how do I get there are all kinds of different strategies. Number two is if I don't have a direction that's pulling me, that is inspiring me, then I'm going to be static or status quo. It's not going to energize me. And it was interesting because I was actually watching another what do you call it, training program, because I try to continue to challenge myself. And this person was pushing me like way beyond where I thought I might go. It says, so they talk about these bodacious goals and objectives. So you can't reach it. It doesn't matter. So he was saying, listen, if you want to build $100 million or you want to build a $50 million company, you need to be thinking about a $500 million company. Or if you want to build a $10 million company, you have to be thinking about a $100 million company. And it's not this about money. It's just what are the goals? What are the objectives that are going to inspire you? So what is that vision? And if you don't have that vision, if you don't have that direction, and you haven't taken that time, then anything will get you there. We've all heard this before. This is stereotypical. But again, we then get wandering. Then our energy is not directed. We're not focused. We're not necessarily doing the things that are most productive to bring us towards that goal. So, okay, what do I want to be? And I'm not here to tell you what you should be or what you should do. But if you don't know what it is, then how can you get there? And that's the other one where, our background, our culture, our family can get in the way of where we want to go. So can you be around people who are at the level you want to go to? I mean, this person was sharing, and I know this, is that your network will influence your net worth, and your 5 closest friends, you will become like them. So is your circle of influence a place that is drawing you and causing you to grow or hindering your growth? And in fact, if you're the number one person in that group in terms of growth and expectation and the ability to contribute, then who in that group has challenged you to go to the next level? And so that's where be very careful about who that circle is. And that circle can be intentional and start reaching out to those people that you can be around that cause you to grow and to dream and to have this vision. And by the way, that vision and dare to dream should be in all areas of your life. Is it physically and financially, spiritually, friends, intellectually, travel? All of these things can be encouraging to where you want to go, what you want to do, not just a single thing like your career.
I love that you mentioned the circle of friends. I just wrote an article on LinkedIn about it. So I totally agree with you on that. And so we start with the big dream, and then even if we don't reach it, it's kind of like when we say reach for the stars and land on the moon, or reach for the moon and land on the stars. And yeah.
Exactly. And somebody said, well, that's not realistic. Well, there are a lot of individuals who have had unrealistic goals who have achieved them. We know what you're going to have if you have none. So none is still none. So I'd rather have some. And the other one is, I think, if we can go back to the last segment, it's okay to revise what your goals and dreams were. I remember when I was a kid in my 20s, I always wanted to own a Ferrari. I said, okay, now I really have zero interest in that. It's just like not something that's important to me right now. So as we mature, as we grow, be aware of what is it that's important to you at this time. And if you try something or go down a certain road, or you have a certain dream that you have and you discover that this really wasn't true to yourself, or not something that was as inspiring as you'd hoped to, it's okay. Let it go. That's part of the refinement as we all grow and develop ourselves over time.
And thank you for mentioning this, because it just really takes me to my next question. After attending your session at the conference, and I also read your book, Why Aren't You More Like Me?
Well, thank you.
Where you tell us about the CRG 21 values list. You challenged us in the conference to narrow down the 21 values to our top 7. It was easy for me to choose the top 2. I had no problem, but I find myself wanting to change the other 5. So if I did it I think the conference was at the beginning of the month, halfway through the month, I did again, the 5s keep changing. So my question to you, is that okay to kind of change these values, or am I missing something? Like, should I be worried?
Well, never be worried, always be in development. So that, first of all, we won't beat ourselves up for this clarity process. I think what happens is sometimes a lot of these values are very close. So it's not that you are swapping out these additional 5. So for those people that are listening or watching, the CRG values are based out of our personality model, and these are behavioral, or what we call internal motivators, versus external values. So like family's not on the list. A value like challenge or responsibility, which is internally motivating or inspiring or supportive of myself, is what we're doing. So when we think about those top values, for the most part, that values list will not change a lot over time. In other words, the value that you have in the bottom almost never will make it to the top unless there's some kind of epiphany or a transformation, or in some cases, as we discussed in the session, sometimes I have values on my list that, again, goes back to the culture, because somebody else told me that it should be there, or society seems to put importance on this one. So obviously I need to make it important too, and it's not really authentically my value. So I think part of this journey is you're going through and say, well, what are my top values? How do I make my choices about them, and what's really important? And what we do say is that knowing what your top values are is critically important to make the right decision every time, because there's so many choices, so much noise. I mean, we are overwhelmed with information, just absolutely overwhelmed. I mean, just think about how much society has changed even in the last 20 years. And what, I go into the airport now, and I'm in the 90s, I flew every week for 7 years. And I was in airports, and back then we didn't have smartphones. So you could have a conversation with people. They were talking, some people had books. But now if you go to an airport, I dare you to find somebody who is not on their smartphone. Everybody is on their smartphone. True. They're in the restaurant, and their couple's going to travel. They're both on their phones. They're sitting in the chairs. The 3 kids, they've got their iPad. They're watching a movie. The parents are on the phone. Everybody's on their phone. Everybody's head is down. So when we think about clarity in our values, what is most important is that it's doing this work helps to free you. If you recall the research that I was citing in the session, is that it reduces stress, because I know that I know that I know who I am. It helps me to make better decision making. I'm open to feedback, both negative and positive, because I'm affirmed and confirmed on who I am and my own identity and what's most important to me. I don't need to have you affirm me. I'm affirming it internally, because if I'm looking to external affirmation, then I have all these other people sort of controlling my direction, which is one of the challenges in society now, is that I'm looking for this external social media affirmation rather than being solid and grounded and spiritually grounded myself. So the values is very powerful for even young people who are watching this. or if you're a parent and you have a young person, if they start to understand what those values are and they start clarifying, this is part of your journey too. So let me flip the questions around. When you were going through this movement of these values, what do you think was occurring or happening for you? And just share with your own audience that journey of how valuable it was for you, but also the process that you were going through that would help them.
It was definitely the process, because there was a lot of clarification in that. Why do I keep bringing accomplishments, let's say, to number 5, and now why would I want it to be number 3 when I know I'm always, excited by a new challenge? So lots of clarification on who I am really and what I value. And you know what? I love the exercise. Well, it's an assessment really so much that I shared it with my husband. And then it was fun to see how much our values were interrelated as well. And whether we are both living our values, kind of what you recommended in the conference, and are you living these values? So I definitely recommend the assessment. It was a lot of fun. And it just to get to know who you are, and are you really content in your life by following these values. And so I did get my husband to do the assessment, and he does have a question for you, is how often do you think we should check in on these values?
Well, I think we want to, of course, how long is a piece of string? And I think that's a legitimate question. I think we can go back to these, when somebody completes the assessment, we really don't ask them to go back and do it again very often. However, we ask them to go back to their results and say, okay, we said that these are my top values, and that we can, on a regular basis, whatever that is, if it's monthly or quarterly or whatever, at least semi-annually, is we say, is this still important to me? Is it being met or not? And what am I doing or not doing? That is the important strategies or steps that you and your husband can now take and say, okay, here are our values. And this is the other side of this, is not only understanding myself, but as you saw in the exercise activity, the ability to get to understand other people, what motivates them, and build relationship with people who are the same or different than me, but also being clear of what are the activities and the things I need to do or not do so that this value is met in my life. And I think that's the activity where we want to check in with that, especially when we first start on a regular basis, to start firming up and confirming, is what I'm changing, is what I'm adjusting, meeting that value or not? And how can I make those values 8, 9, or 10 out of 10 as far as fulfillment as I go forward? And once I start reaching that, then what do I need to continue to do so that this is an energizing or inspiring part of my life?
Thank you so much for these tips, Dr. Ken. And yes, we will be doing it. My husband is an engineer, and so he's like, so 6 months, 3 months. How structured should it be? I have come to my last question for you, Dr. Ken, is we always advise our clients to continually step out of their comfort zone. And you also talked about growth and embracing opportunities. What are some of the ideas or projects going for you today or in the near future?
Oh, projects for me. Well, one of the things that I like least is marketing copy. But at the same time, for those of us that are in business or anything, even if I'm a career coach, I have to market my services. So what we're shifting as a company, and this is our number one project. Most of my life when I first started, if I look young and I sound young. So I'm just going to go with that, even if it doesn't.
You are young, and now with the mustache gone, you are looking younger.
Yeah, I much younger. When I started in this profession in the 90s, email didn't even exist. So almost everything had to be in person. That was kind of the nature of how things occurred. And then in the 2000s, teleseminars came. I mean, people don't even believe that, but where you'd have 400 or 500 people on a phone line, where you had these aggregated systems and you had somebody sharing auditorily and on a phone line a program or a process. Then you went to webinars. Now we have Zoom, and we have a Zoom recording we're doing right now. And Zoom now is like Kleenex. It's this verb that describes, okay, we're on this online video platform to do it. So our number one project right now, from a lifestyle and from a dream, is aggregating all our online content into a automated funnel so that our online courses and our online content is then available and selling just on a regular basis, and that we have the systems to support it. In that doing and traveling a lot to do keynotes. I love keynoting. You could tell that I enjoy doing it, but I'm not clamoring to go chase events down. If somebody want me to come, fine, but I'm not going out and trying to get a bunch of keynote presentations from an outbound. If it's inbound and somebody says, I'd like you to speak at our conference, I'll be there. But I'm not trying to chase doing 300 days or a year on the road anymore. So optimizing our business, making it mostly online, and then aggregating the content that I've spent the last 3.5 decades put together, plus my partners, which is 4 decades, and just having it in a just on time, 24/7 online offerings for individuals, and then have the personal interactions like we're having here, like a podcast or whatever as part. So that's a transition, that's a change, that's a shift, so that the majority of our revenue in our business comes from that type of offering. And then this is somewhat confidential, even though we're on this public area. I've been contracted by another company to put together, over the next year, to put together a very thorough and involved leadership curriculum that's going to be marketed globally to the top 5,000 companies around the country, around the world. And so we're now working for a year with this other firm to put this together for them as we aggregate and take together all the content that we've done around self-awareness, self-management, self-mastery, and leadership into an extensive one-year curriculum that people can take for leadership development and personal development.
Such an exciting opportunity, and thank you for sharing it on this program.
Yes.
I look forward to it for sure.
Yes,
And
ma'am.
going online, I think the pandemic showed us that we have to go online as professionals, and everybody really needed to be online during the pandemic. Dr. Ken, these were all the questions I had prepared for you today. I usually ask guests if they like to wrap up with more tip or advice to my audience.
Yeah, a couple of things. Well, first of all, let's share the gift. So I'm going to give freely to everybody who is listening or watching a copy of my book, The Quest for Purpose, in the e-format, in an ebook. And you're going to have the link in the podcast, but the link is Ken Keis. So my name spelled KENKEIS.com/right career fit. I don't know how we got that. So it's a hidden URL that you'll be able to go in and then be able to put your email and name in so that you can get a download free copy of the book, The Quest for Purpose, which you got the printed copy at the conference. My encouragement for individuals when we think about wrapping up, is my responsibility. My life is my responsibility, and nobody's going to do it for you. You can't be a victim and a victor at the same time. So yes, I'm not saying that there's certain things in our background that we might have to overcome or have resilience. My encouragement is that if you take responsibility for your life, in other words, do the work, get coaches like yourself to help them go through the process, get the assistance. Don't try to do it on your own. Most of the top performers in the world, if not all, have a coach, an advisor, or advisors to help them go to the next level. Don't try to do this on your own. There's other people who have been there before, but go in and lean in and do the work. I was actually just listening to this webinar this week, and he said the number one top performers in the world are working 21 hours, that own businesses are working 21 hours a week, and it's 21 hours. But the rest of the time, they're learning. They're meeting with other people. It's not that they're not doing anything. It's just that they're building their business for 3 or 4 days a week. And the rest of the time, they're reading books, they're meeting new people, they're listening to podcasts. And I know that I listen to 1 to 2 hours of podcasts every day, because I need to grow. I need to challenge myself. I'm not done. I remember Jim Rohn, he's long passed away now. He said, the richness of your life will be the extent of your library. So, and when we think library now, that could be podcasts, that could be ebooks, it could be printed books, is that, again, there is so much information, so many opportunities, your podcast, what you're doing here, that there's no excuse for it. So I'm just encouraging people, lean into it. There's an opportunity for all of us, in spite of your condition. All of us have overcome something somewhere, somehow, some greater than others, but your life is your responsibility. So, and all the resources that you need are out there. Just look for them, just anticipate them, just research for them. And at that level, when you are in your zone, when you're doing your purpose and living your values, is your highest level of contribution to serve and to help others, which is really, in the end, what all of us are doing.
Thank you so much for this empowering message, Dr. Ken, and thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome. It was a pleasure to be able to serve.
You've been listening to Hoda's Career Info, the program where career professionals from across the globe join me to empower you to succeed. My guest today on Hoda's Career Info is Dr. Ken Keis, a career expert whose focus is to improve your personal effectiveness in a way that is genuine and credible. You can connect with Dr. Ken Keis on LinkedIn. Please remember that you can listen to Hoda's Career Info since it's also dropped as a podcast. To let me know if you are interested in an opportunity to talk about your work, you can send me a direct message on my website, rightcareerfit.com, where you can also sign up for my newsletter to stay up to date on the latest episodes. Remember to like, subscribe, share, and follow me on social media for more career info. I am your host, Hoda, and until next time, stay inspired and keep moving forward in constructive ways.